Okay, Mr. Chairman, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board reconvene from closed session.
We have a motion by Mrs. Washington. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hester. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
I move that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed in the closed session, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board.
We have a motion by Mrs. Washington. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion?
Mr. Comstock?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mrs. Washington?
Yes.
Mr. Hester?
Yes.
Mr. Foreman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, a few motions coming out of closed session. I move to certify the board has reviewed each school's crisis and health emergency plan in compliance with Virginia Code Section 22.1-279.8.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hester. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
I move to approve the release of students A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and K from compulsory attendance for religious reasons.
We have a motion by Mrs. Washington. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hester. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
And I move to approve the personnel actions as recommended by the superintendent.
Motion by Mrs. Washington. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Washington.
Thank you.
This time, if you would please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have a consent agenda in front of us this evening, including the approval of minutes from the August 10th, 2021 school board meeting, use of school property, and student trips. How would the board like to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Lake. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hester. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to citizen and staff comments. The Frederick County School Board is pleased to receive public comments at each monthly meeting. In order to allow the board sufficient time for its other business, the total time allowed for public comment will generally be limited to 20 minutes. Individuals speaking to the board will be allotted 3 minutes. Those individuals representing groups or organizations will be allotted 5 minutes with one representative per group. Upon recognition by the chairman, the speaker should clearly state his or her name, residing district, and the subject of their comments. All comments are to be addressed to the chair. The board will receive comments but will not respond to questions or engage in dialogue. This is an opportunity to be heard, and the board will refer any issues or concerns to staff or appropriate committees. The school board is committed to showing appropriate respect and courtesy to all citizens, and speakers are expected to show appropriate respect and courtesy to the board. Members of the audience are not permitted to interrupt the speaker or meeting by asking questions or making comments. School board meetings are tape recorded for the purpose of clarification and development of the official minutes. So that being said, we do have some sign-ups here this evening. Up first would be Gail.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Gail Ferreira. I'm in the Shawnee District. And do I believe in feminism? Absolutely. Do I believe in women's rights? Absolutely. Miss Washington, you could appreciate that, I'm sure. But do I believe in transgender boys using girls' bathrooms? Absolutely not. It may be good to start out by defining transgenderism. A fact of transgenderism is that it does not exist physically in the body. It is not the way someone is. It is one's subjective self-conception. It is not known what causes gender dysphoria. It is well documented in the scientific literature that only 2 to 27% of gender dysphoric kids stick with their belief, and they are of the other sex or gender. Something cannot be a thing if it is usually temporary. But if we look past these cultural and political forces, the issue is a little easier to understand. Simply put, transgenderism is a belief system, an ideology with no basis in objective science. Even the American Psychiatric Association explains on its website that transgender is a non-medical term. It does not describe an actual medical or physiological condition. Instead, it is deemed a psychological, social, and even ideological identity. When discussing this issue, parents can trust that science and reason can help kids see through the confusion. It can be complicated because it's something we could never have imagined otherwise reasonable people would ever take seriously, but yet they do. The issue is further complicated by a tsunami-like cultural force telling us that anyone who does not accept that boys can become girls and vice versa with total affirmation is a bigot. Gender ideology has run amok. Loudoun County Public Schools Policy 8040 was passed to address the treatment and common issues pertaining to the minority of transgender students in elementary and secondary schools. According to this policy, it says that all students are entitled to have access to restrooms and locker rooms that are sanitary, safe, and adequate so that they can comfortably and fully engage in their school programs and activities. But this statement is followed by a contrary statement that says students shall be allowed to use the facility that corresponds to their consistently asserted gender identity. No, this is not their biological identity. This means that they will be boys and girls' bathrooms and locker rooms if a boy happens to feel like a girl on any particular day. Can I continue?
You have another 30 seconds. Keep
Okay.
going.
How safe is this for a second grade girl, for example? They will see and witness boys that are now using a urinal while they are washing their hands. Policy 8040 actually says that boys' feelings are more important than any girl's privacy. It allows boys and adult male staff members to walk around naked in the girls' locker rooms. They can even shower with women at a gym. This will make many girls feel uncomfortable. So please think about voting for any kind of transgender rights that are written for a minority for students but will have far-reaching impact on girls' well-being and sports participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferreira. Next, we have Brandy Miller.
My name is Brandy, and I'm in the Shawnee District. Over the past 10 days, I've had the opportunity to work with school board members or employees like the Board of Education, teachers, staff regarding masks, IEPs, and safety of students. Now, we didn't even make it to day 4, and my daughter had a significant injury at school. That's worrisome enough to be in a classroom setting, and no one saw anything happen. However, 3 staff members at the school took her out into the hallway and tried to calm her down. 2 of them took her back to the regular classroom and tried to calm her down before my 6-year-old had to request to go to the nurse several times before she was taken. The nurse called me, made a decision before calling me that she cleaned the wound, put a Band-Aid on it, sent her back to class. That's a medical decision. That's my right, whether she's okay or not. So if you can't protect her in a general classroom where there's supposed to be extra eyes, where there's at least one teacher that's supposed to be watching, how can I ensure her safety whenever there's boys and girls bathrooms, or men? For that matter, any male teacher could decide that he feels his gender identity as a woman and could go in the bathroom with my daughter. She's back there. There's no way that she could protect herself in a private setting. There's no way that she should see the genitalia of any man, whether it be they feel like a woman or today. She has brothers. She knows the difference between boys and girls. She knows that her and her brother are different. She also knows that her brother shut the bathroom door and lock it when they go in, so she doesn't accidentally walk in on them, because they care more about her than anyone else. I recently pulled my daughter from school because I was told by the principal, I cannot guarantee the safety. All we can do is hope for the best. Hope for the best. So to a mom sitting here who's already had problems, to my 6-year-old daughter, to my 2 boys who could be accused of anything because the blame is mostly put on boys in these situations. Let's just hope for the best. I'm done with hope. I'm done with putting my faith in other people. I will pull my kids and I will do what I need to do for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Next, we have Rhonda Sargent.
Good evening. My name is Rhonda Sargent, and basically I'm going to speak about miscellaneous items, and I am from the Back Creek District. First of all, I would like to talk about the thing about transgender as well. My personal opinion is I would not like to see that be passed. However, if it were to be passed, I believe that they should have a separate restroom. Such as you go into Walmart down here on 50. They have a men's bathroom, they have a woman's bathroom, and they have what they call a family bathroom. But I do not believe if the transgender regulation is passed, if someone feels that they're a male, and they feel like a female, I don't believe they should be entitled to go into the female bathroom. I mean, I don't know, I'll speak this in the fact that if any of you all have children of your own, how would you feel about the situation yourself? And that's, I'm not calling names, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just saying put yourself in someone else's place. That's how I was raised. Anyhow, my next thing that I would like to talk about, and I know you don't answer questions, but maybe I could get an email answer on this. When you have the public meetings, they're evidently televised on YouTube, I guess, at the time. However, after the meetings are over, they don't appear to be available unless you want to do a FOIA request for them. And I don't understand that because the Board of Supervisors for the county, they do their meetings, they're public, and they're also available for some time thereafter, after the meetings are done, so people that don't have the opportunity to attend can at least watch it and be filled in on what exactly was going on. And I would like to recommend that maybe you all consider that as well, because it would help some of the people that can't attend know what's going on and know what was said versus maybe what they read in the paper. I mean, not saying that, we all know how things go. Things can get misconstrued sometimes, and I think it would be valuable to have it where they can see it later on. And I guess that's it. That's all I have to say, so. Have a
Thank
good
you, Ms.
evening.
Sargent. Next, we have Miles Atkins.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. First, I'd just like to make some general comments about some stuff. We voted, or you all voted 4-3 to end the mask mandate here in the schools. And then 2 days later, Richmond says we got to wear masks. The vote, if I recall correctly, was to stand up against stuff like that. Now, I know that Mr. Hester has went on Facebook and publicly said he wishes he voted different, but yet on your personal Facebook page, you also had pictures of your children not wearing masks right around that same time. So rules for thee, not for me. We also have in the New Ayler School urinals. They say, there's different reasons for that. Part of it is because there's away teams that come visit the schools or whatever. I played sports, played baseball, football, wrestled, and I was an away team sometimes. And not once did I not know how to use a regular commode. I have one in my house. I don't need a urinal to use it. All right, so there's no reason that there should be urinals in the women's restroom. Just another part of indoctrination. Next, I'm a United States Marine, fought for this country, and it's kind of sad to see that every time I've come to this building, whether it be during hours or after hours, there's never an American flag flying out front on that flagpole. It remains bare. I don't know if it's part of some kind of indoctrination or whatever, having these bathrooms like this, not having an American flag out front, but we need to get back to teaching kids in schools. Virginia is one of the lowest in math and English, and let's drop the wokeness for a little while. We're putting way too much money in it. Dr. Savine, you're getting paid way too much to bring wokeness into our schools. An extra $50,000 a year to bring wokeness into our schools. Shame on you, board, for voting for that.
Next, we have Carrie Eustace.
Good evening, guys. My name's Carrie, and I'm in the Gainsborough district. I did just send you an email, and it was super late because I was out of town. And I know you can't answer questions. Maybe you can answer it at the end. Maybe you can send me, a response in an email or something. But I was just made aware of the, training informational video that Virginia Department of Education is wanting the public school systems to use in how the staff and teachers should commemorate the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and how the focus needs to be on Muslims and Muslims being the victims in the 9/11 attack, and that's what they want their focus to be, because there was hatred afterwards, and there was definitely violence towards Muslim as opposed to the extremists that perpetuated 9/11. And so they would like, the Virginia Department of Education would like the focus to be on Muslims being the victim in that attack. So I'm wondering if Frederick County is actually going to use that video. Have they put that out to the staff as that's how they would like to commemorate 9/11? I could go into my opinion on that actually being the case, but my main concern is, if that is the case, when will we be commemorating 9/11 in the schools? Because since it's on a Saturday, are we doing it on Friday or are we doing it on Monday? Because depending on what day that is, my child will not go. We will stay home. We will watch documentaries on 9/11. We will see who the true victims were that day. So that's my main question. I would like to know how it's being handled, but when I leave here tonight, I would like to know the date that Frederick County is going to do it, because if you can't tell me how they're going to handle it today, excuse me, if you can't tell me how they're going to handle it today, I would at least like to know what day it is so that I can keep my child home that day and she can get an actual education on 9/11. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Clay Perry.
Hey, Jay. Board members, Dr. Savine, Clay Perry, Back Creek District. Got several topics as well. First topic being for Mr. Hester. Here. If you would please, if that Facebook post is still out there, please clear up the misinformation that's on that. You stated that an outside party came in and riled up a bunch of people to do that. That was not the case. Every person that spoke at the last meeting were citizens and parents of Frederick County. It was not brought on by an outside entity. On to the transgender topic. I think Gail did a great job covering that topic, but to me, we talked about the mask mandate last time, and being concerned about the safety and privacy of our students, but yet we're not really worried about safety when it comes to girls having to share bathrooms. Bathrooms are for a biological function, and so it should be separated by your biological sex. It's pretty simple. The bathroom doesn't identify what your gender is or anything of that nature. It's just a biological function. And if we care about the safety of our children, then we'll make sure that doesn't happen. And on to the urinal issue, I didn't have this on my list, but since Miles brought it up, that means that's space that we're using for some away games when travel teams come in to play at Ayler a few times a year, maybe a dozen or so times a year. That's space that, after gym class, that a little girl can't, let's maybe say there's 3 stalls instead of 4. I don't know exactly how many. But that's space that's being unused. Let's say they're running late for class and they can't go to the bathroom. I mean, it creates an inconvenience for students that use that girls' locker room every single day of the school year, as opposed to the few times that a travel team or another school comes in as a visiting team. So I really don't understand the logic of why we would do that. Like Miles said, we know how to use a stall. But on to the next topic. I do have a question. My understanding is that as far as we're worried about safety of the students over COVID, my understanding is that teachers are no longer mandated to wipe down desks and tables like they were last year. So if we're so concerned about the safety, why did we make that optional, but yet make mask mandatory? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why can't we make that happen? It just seems very hypocritical, or at least illogical at the best. And by the way, there were 2 teachers, I understand, the first week of school at Jameswood High School that tested positive for COVID. So Brandon, I'll follow up with you later, but I would ask that Dr. Savine, if you would share with Brandon, since he's my representative, what the protocol was taken, what students were close to those teachers. You don't have to give names, but were students quarantined, the things of that nature. I'd like to understand that. And then really what I want to get to is this $50,000 raise you got this summer, Dr. Savine. We talked about, at the last meeting, we talked about teachers leaving for Loudoun County because teachers don't make enough. That's $50,000 we could have put towards teacher pay to keep our teachers here in Frederick County and not in Loudoun County versus go to you. My wife was a school teacher for many years, and she'd get the letter from you every year about how you fought so hard for teachers' pay, and you just couldn't get the Board of Supervisors to approve it. But here you had a chance to give $50,000 to teachers, but you took it for yourself. And I think that's just very unfortunate. And so I would just leave that. And I guess my question is, where did the $50,000 come from? Because it wasn't in the budget. That was my final question.
Next, we have Terry Flynn.
I was not prepared to speak. That's okay. I do want to say one thing about transgenders. One thing that's never going to change for a boy. Oh, I'm sorry, my name's Terry Flynn. I'm from Back Creek. One thing that's never going to change for a boy or girl is their chromosomes. A boy will always be a boy, a girl will always be a girl, and that will never change. So, I came to speak about masks as far as the children having to wear them every day. The CDC has regulated wearing masks, but that's not backed by science. In fact, they have changed their mind with the wind. One day, yes, one day, no, whatever. As far as facts goes, masks and face coverings do not work in preventing any viral illness, and it's determined by 3 NIH studies that the coronavirus and the respiratory viruses are spread by aerosol particles, which are small enough to go through any mask. Pathogens with an animal reservoir cannot be eradicated. Are you planning to have children wear masks indefinitely? Masks do harm our children. They cause an increase in bacterial and viral infections. They cause hypoxia, which is low oxygen saturations. They cause hypercapnia, which is CO2 retention. They cause dizziness. They cause headaches. They cause syncope, which is passing out. They cause shortness of breath. They cause anxiety. They cause brain damage to young children. Even if you think masks work, you know children are not wearing them properly. And there has been no COVID cases, or rather all COVID cases pose no risk to our children because they have a 99.9% survival rate as per the CDC numbers. You chose to keep schools closed because of positive test cases that are based on faulty PCR testing. The CDC has estimated that 438 children died of influenza between 2018 and 2019, more than died of COVID in the last year and a half. One of my questions is, since 2020, where's the flu? Where's the flu? There has also been no recorded student-to-teacher transmission in the entire world. What is it called when you force children to wear a mask for fear of virus and a virus that causes no harm to them? I call it child abuse. There is physical and psychological damage to children thinking that the air is toxic and everyone around them is sick. You are dehumanizing the children. Your job is to protect the children first, educate them, nothing else. You are not elected to make medical decisions for them, including masks and vaccines. None of you are doctors. There is no law requiring masks, or no law requiring children to wear face masks in school. This is medical tyranny, and I thank you.
Thank you. Next we have James Holbrook.
My name is James Holbrook. I'm from the Shawnee District, and I'm going to start with this. I am offended that people on this board and around here are wearing a mask. Second, let's get to the other point. Finance. You have funds here for 2021 obligated for carry forward. Where'd they come from? Who's responsible for these funds? You have unobligated surplus funds. Where'd they come from? Who's responsible? When does the taxpayer get to see what's going on? I've looked at your finance and look at your budget. It makes no sense. I run companies and send financial statements far better than any of you. It's a disgrace. Educational Technology Grant Resolution. What's the grant for? Who will be in control of it? We have supplemental appropriations from the state for coronavirus. What will they be used for? And then you want to fix Ayler. Ayler was turned down, was decommissioned so you could build a school. And one of the things going around, it was going to be used for 9th graders from Sharando High School. Gentlemen, what's going on? Don't like this. We wanted the school to be sent back to the supervisor so it could reduce our debt. You had a time in this county where people were unemployed, unable to get work because things were closed. This is tyranny, gentlemen, and you're pushing everybody to the limit. Now, I'm going to get to the next thing that drives me insane. I've studied Islam for over 10 years, from the masters, from the Islamists themselves. I suggest you go home and read Surah 9:5. That is what they believe. Those Muslims that are considered moderate, they're not moderate. They're waiting for their leader to tell them what to do. I've read their books. I've read their documentation. You and I are kafar. Do you know what a kafar is in Islam? It's worse than a dog. They despise us. It's time that we woke up and paid attention, because our children are learning the wrong stuff. We're presenting the wrong stuff to the world. It's time to wake up, gentlemen, because when the time comes, it may be too late. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for the sign-up list. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak this evening? Please.
Thank you. Josh Ludwig, Shawnee District. I want to turn back to the transgender issue a bit. I know the board probably has a decision before it soon, and I'd like to address several points. First of all, I encourage you to do your research. If you look at gender dysphoria in the scientific literature before the current fad, you'll see that true diagnosis of gender dysphoria was less than 0.04% of the population. Now, if you take that percentage and you apply that to the student population in this county, how many children is that? Is that even one? What we should be doing is treating people with a disorder and helping them through that, not affecting all the other students and parents and population of the county with basically a fad. All the others that claim this beyond 0.04%, it's a fad. It's a movement. You're trolling your teachers or your friends, but it's not true gender dysphoria. The next piece of this is I've read the guidelines that the state recommends in great detail, and I noticed some very disturbing things in there. I'd caution you to not be swept away by the pretty language and think about what I'm about to say, and that is the document begins with a page or a page and a half listing of rights, civil rights acts, constitutional rights, etc. Ends with a non-bullying law or law, I believe. But then the logic from there gets very bad. It asserts that people who are transgender have the right, for example, let me just give you one example, First Amendment, have the right to call themselves whatever they want. It's called freedom of speech. Okay, fine. Let's follow that logic where it goes. Why then do the guidelines that they recommend say that all the other students must call them by their preferred pronouns? That is using one person's right to extinguish another person's right. My children and the children of undoubtedly the majority of this county have the right, respectfully, not in a bullying fashion, but respectfully, to refer to other students by what they know to be scientifically correct, biologically correct, and with their conscience, their beliefs, their religion. Any policy that says it's going to pay a teacher less or fire a teacher, punish a student or expel a student because they have used the wrong pronoun when what they're doing is actually correct scientifically and biologically is a bad policy. So I ask you please to do one more final thing, and that is anything you're about to adopt, whether it's these guidelines directly if you're going to take a vote, or any other policy which is driven by that, putting urinals in bathrooms, putting women's dispenser products in boys' bathrooms. I've heard a lot of different things that might be going on. Anything that you're doing that's affected by these transgender movement guidelines, I ask you to be fully transparent and to let all the parents know what you're doing. We don't want to find out about it after our tax dollars have been spent and the ribbon cutting is going on in a school. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Wright, this gentleman has his hand up first, then we'll get to you, and then, is there anyone else? One more after that, then we're past our 20 minutes, so 3 more, and then we need to move on with the rest of the meeting.
David Sparkman, Red Bud District, Shantia, hello. Just a little bit of education. First of all, 9/11 was not New York City. It was a refugee camp in Lebanon, okay? That is where the first 9/11 was. The Israelis committed a raid on the camp and killed quite a few of the terrorists that were causing terror in Israel on September 11th, many years ago. The attack on New York City was on the anniversary of that attack. Okay? That's just history. You're not being taught that history, unfortunately. The other concern I have is a little bit beyond what you're looking at right now. I have a brother who spent 7 years in prison for molesting children. He was molested when he was 8 years old. Okay? I had a friend in college who was homosexual. He thought he might join the Catholic religion and become a priest because that was okay in that group of people there. I don't think Catholics really appreciate that, but that was his opinion. I have an uncle who existed in a homosexual relationship most of his life, okay? I am well aware of that segment of our society, but I would like to point out to you that children between the age of 8 and 12 or 13 are unsure of themselves. It isn't until the hormones kick in. I remember having a crush on a girl in 7th grade. When the hormones kick in, that your sexuality really gets defined. And before that time, you can confuse those kids. My best friend in college, he had a homosexual relationship in Boy Scouts on a camping trip. Okay? We need to keep the molesters from recruiting within the younger people before they can make up their minds what they are and who they are. There's a lot going on right now to say, oh, homosexuality is fine. Homosexuality leads to a lot of suicides, a lot of very unhappy people, people unfulfilled who have trouble having children. Okay? Think about these things here. These are not always plain and clear what people are trying to do. And we need to raise good families and good kids. We need to protect our children. And that's part of your job as well as mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Reisinger?
Hi there, Board. Eric Reifinger, Shawnee District. Got a few topics I wanted to just touch on this evening. Just to correct some statements that were made earlier this evening. Virginia public schools actually ranked very high. They were ranked 4th in the United States here in the 2021 poll for World Population Review and 11th in U.S. News' review for 2021. So great job for the public schools here in Virginia for what you're doing. The other information that I wanted to touch on, it's only because there have been comments. Trans does not equal molesters. Trans students are human beings just like you and I that just associate with a different gender than what they originally were assigned at birth. So this constant demonization of trans students, we have to stop that. The reason we have individuals in these classes of gay, bi, trans, when you put those negative stigmas on somebody and you constantly berate them because they are different than what you are, then yes, that puts a very significant toll on your mind. It makes you feel like you're not wanted, that people don't accept you for who you are, and that's what leads to negative outcomes for these students and for these individuals. Last thing I want to touch on, the main point I actually want to talk about, is the 4th high school for Frederick County Public Schools. I saw that it got moved down to 5th on the CIP behind the school board IT edition. I don't know why that got moved down. One thing I would like to talk with some of you, perhaps after the meeting or outside of the meeting, is to understand why that may have moved down on the CIP ranking and why the school IT edition was moved up. Overcrowding has been occurring in our high schools for a significant portion of time. I believe all of our high schools are over capacity, and the construction for the 4th high school isn't scheduled until the next 4 years. It wouldn't be completed until 2027. So we're asking for the next 6 years for all of these students that will be going through our high schools to have to be in overcrowded classrooms. Student to teacher ratios are going to be extremely high, and that doesn't provide the most conducive environment for students to have exceptional educational experiences. That's pretty much all I wanted to speak on this evening. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Reisinger. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Tony Overball. I'm from Back Creek District. You know, I'm not going to beat you guys up over the mask thing because I know that that was a governor's mandate, that he has the powers to do what he did, and I know that you guys can't change that, right? However, I do wonder, when you take a look at yourselves and you think about yourselves and how you do things, is this theater, or do you do this every day at your job for 8 hours a day? Do you wear these masks? Do you do it every time you go out in public? Is this for show? Excuse me, is this for show or is this for real? So, like I said, I know you can't change what the governor did, but I just want you to really think about what every decision you make does to someone else. So if you're not willing to do that yourselves, each and every one of you, every day throughout your lives, if you're not willing to do what these kids have to do, not just the masks, but everything. Think about this. I came in a little late, so I don't know if there's some kind of vote on the transgender thing. I don't know, but I'll speak on that also. Let me ask you this. I can't pick on her. Let's say would you like it if one of these ladies came into the bathroom while you're in there? Probably not. You wouldn't like it either. I'm sure you wouldn't like it. And I don't want to pick on the lady, but you wouldn't like it if I came in the bathroom when you were there. I'm sure you wouldn't like that. And so I just want you to stop and think about it in a personal perspective. That's the way I do things in my business. I think, how is this going to affect me? How do I do what I'm asking my employees to do? So I'm asking you to think about that. Could I come to your home and join you in your bathroom or any of those kinds of things? Probably not. So just think long and careful, because just because a boy's pretending to be a girl and a girl is pretending to be a boy, and that's really all it is, because they are still male and female. They can pretend all they want. But do we, the adults in the room, enable that? I don't think so. Not in certain circumstances. Now, if they want to pretend to be a girl, of course, that's their right to do that. I don't have any problem. As a matter of fact, I know some of these folks that do that. And I'm just as friendly to them as I would be to any of you that came to my home as a dinner party or anything like that. So I think you should never mistreat these folks who want to do that. But I think enabling them and giving them special rights, you really should think about it if you wouldn't do it yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the citizen comment part of the evening. We have approved the minutes earlier, which brings us to our reports. First one is from the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Savine.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's my pleasure to congratulate Middletown Elementary School kindergarten teacher Melissa Barb, who has been named the 2022 Frederick County Public Schools Teacher of the Year. We had the pleasure of surprising Mrs. Barb with this award this past week, and certainly it was a joy of Mr. Bach and Dr. Angelo to join me for that special celebration along with her kindergarten students. I'd also like to mention that the other finalists were Evendale Elementary School Special Education teacher Beth Sager and Jordan Springs Elementary School English Language Learner teacher Jackie Zacharias. Over the next 2 weeks, we will be recognizing the winners of our Support Staff Awards. Would also like to provide a reminder that the first of 3 training sessions being offered to help parents learn how to protect their children online is being held tomorrow night at Millbrook High School from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. The training session is being offered by Frederick County Public Schools in partnership with the Frederick County Sheriff's Office and the EAS Winchester PLLC. The training is being repeated on Wednesday, September the 15th at Sharando High School from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and on Thursday, September the 16th at Jameswood High School from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. All parents and guardians are invited to attend any of the training sessions. Also like to announce that Bright Futures Frederick Winchester and the Frederick County Sheriff's Office are holding a community safety fair this Saturday, September the 11th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Jameswood Middle School. There are a number of fun, family-friendly activities planned throughout the day. In addition, donations of non-perishable food to benefit the Bright Futures Food Pack program will be accepted throughout the event. Also like to remind the community that this Friday, September the 10th, is the deadline to apply to participate in our FCPS 101 Community Engagement Program. FCPS 101 is designed to provide parents and others with an opportunity to learn more about our school division and its operations. Additional information and a link to the online application form is available on our website. I also want to thank First Bank and the Virginia Property Group, who have served as sponsors of the FCPS 101 program each year since its inception. And lastly, I'd like to remind the board and community that this Friday, September the 10th, Greenwood Mill Elementary School will once again conduct its annual September 11th tribute event. This is a special ceremony. Those of you that have attended in the past, you know that time is spent remembering those lost on September 11th, 2001. Also, they take special time in honoring our local heroes. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Savine. Any questions, comments for Dr. Savine at this time? All right. Moving on, next we have a report from the Assistant Superintendent for Administration. Mr. Bach.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Savine. You have in your packet tonight our August 31 enrollment report. And our enrollment on August 31st was 13,771 students, which represents an increase of 89 students from our last day of school for the 2021 school year. When comparing this, or since June 17th, which was our last day of school and our ending enrollment for 2020-21 school year, James Woods High School saw an increase of 58 students and is currently at 111.3% of enrollment. Millbrook High School saw an increase of 20 students and is currently at 112% enrollment. And Sharando High School saw an increase of 50 students and is currently at 121% enrollment. Overall, our high school enrollment is up 128 students since the end of last school year. We did see a sharp decrease in enrollment at Admiral Byrd Middle School, but we would anticipate that with the opening of Robert E. Ayler Middle School. There was an increased enrollment there of 149 students, which represents a net decrease of 21 students between those two schools. Both Frederick County Middle and James Wood Middle saw decreases of enrollment in 28 and 71 students respectively. Overall, our middle school enrollment is down, 120 students. 4 elementary schools saw decreases in enrollment, and the most notable were Apple Pie Ridge with 12 students, Indian Hollow with 10, and Stonewall with 31 students. Our remaining 8 elementary schools saw increases of enrollment, and most notable are, Armel, which is at 109, Armel at 21 students, Jordan Springs at 41 students, Middletown at 41 students, and Orchard View at 119 students. Overall, our elementary enrollment is up 81 students. And one final comment, as you heard above, all of our high schools are over enrollment capacity, and we do have 3 elementary schools that are currently over enrollment capacity, and those are Armel at 109%, Jordan Springs at 102%, and Middletown at 106%. And that's all I have for my report, and I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Questions or comments from Mr. Bach at this time? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a report from our Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, Dr. Angelo.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Savine, I'm pleased to get back to our monthly updates on the implementation of Inspire 2025. And this evening, we have a group of teachers who's going to share with you the Summer Academy. We did it a little bit differently this year, and we had opportunities for students at elementary, middle, and high school. And it was really focused on learning experiences that support our Portrait of a Graduate and Inspire 2025. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Becky Hedrick and Kelsey Wendell, who will be coming up to share the elementary piece, and then they will introduce their subsequent colleagues. Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, Dr. Savine, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. My name is Becky Hedrick, and this is my colleague, Kelsey Wendell. Both of us were involved in the planning for our Summer Academy program at the elementary level, and we both had the opportunity to serve as teachers in 2 different schools. The students were able to undertake various project-based learning experiences each day they attended camp, and those experiences were related to the theme for the week. Students in all grade levels planned, created, tested, and improved their project designs. We will highlight a few of the daily projects our students experienced during their camps. Kindergarten and first grade students constructed mermaid traps. Students in second and third grade created an amusement park that they would want to visit, and students in fourth and fifth grades built shelters to withstand bad weather. Their learning experiences that were planned for and facilitated by teachers incorporated reading and math skills, while allowing students to have voice and choice in their learning through hands-on challenges.
Through this strategic plan, we have been striving to create an innovative communities where caring relationships and authentic learning inspires all students. The experiences that students participated in were meaningful, engaging, and challenged conventional thinking, which closely aligns with the tenets of Inspire 2025. Our families recognize that, and these are some of the comments and feedback that we have received. Thank you and all the staff for making so many students feel good about school. My son liked it and he enjoyed it because every day he told me what he does there. He came home very happy thanks to his teachers for giving thanks to the teachers for giving your teachings to my son every day. Thank you for doing an awesome job. My daughter loves summer camp. Our initial goal for Summer Academy was to provide a safe, fun, and supportive environment, as you can see in our Summer Academy vision statement. Through this process, we had several reflections and celebrations. For some students, problem solving and decision making did not come easy. They wanted to be given or told the correct way to complete the challenge. Some students were not used to having choice in how they completed a task. For some teachers, implementing lesson plans and organizing materials that did not follow traditional format was a challenge. And as always, time was an obstacle. We learned that some students did not have enough time to complete their challenges, which caused them frustration. And some of the challenges took longer than anticipated, so teachers ran out of time to complete everything that had been planned for our academy.
Now for some of our celebrations. Our students' collaboration and communication skills were strengthened and helped them to build positive relationships between their peers and teachers. Students were highly engaged because of the choice that was incorporated into the challenges they completed each day. As part of Inspire 2025, we want students to be creative and innovative, flexible and adaptable, and be critical thinkers and problem solvers. We feel that our Summer Academy camps got us one step closer to that for many of our students. This completes the elementary portion of the presentation, and we would like to hand it over to our middle school presenters.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Savine, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, educators, and parents. My name is Laura Zigmont, and this is Michelle Hammer. And we'd like to start off by thanking all of you for making this amazing summer experience a reality.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the projects that our middle schoolers participated in. We took a PBL approach to the summer camp, and our sixth graders worked on investigating outdoor learning spaces, where they designed the ultimate outdoor learning space, and you can see there a picture of one of them that they designed. Seventh graders, we had two separate projects. Our math and science teachers came up with investigating bees, and they actually designed gardens that would attract the bees. They got to build beehives. Mr. Putt came out from Frederick County Middle School, and you can see them there putting together some beehives. Our English and history students investigated what makes us American, and they did a whole research project on what makes us American. In eighth grade, we also had two different projects. Math and science did investigating the Olympics, and they designed and created new games complete with rules and the medals that went with them. They conducted Olympic trials and had the events. And then in English and history, we had a mock trial, all based around the short story, The Telltale Heart. Along with those projects, our elective teachers got involved to help out, and it was amazing to see the collaboration between all of the content areas and the electives as they worked on their challenges and goals.
A typical day for the middle school students would be we came together in the morning and ate breakfast, and then we did a growth mindset about how to persevere or how to do something that you never thought you could do before. Then they had 2 academic blocks and an elective that they chose week by week so that they can experience which of the electives they would like to if they wanted a different one every week. At the end of the day, they did a reflection on the growth mindset activity that we had done in the morning. And then they took we called it a dinner ticket home, where they would discuss their growth mindset or something they did that day at camp, and then they turned it into a drawing the next day for a reward. We then had lunch together, and then teachers and students would mingle until the buses came to pick them up.
So at the end of the academy, we had a showcase where students got to display their projects and talents. And it was amazing to hear the feedback, not only from teachers, but especially from our students and our parents. I'll never forget one student going out to the bus and saying, "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. I wouldn't miss this for anything." And it just made my whole summer and every minute that we spent planning and implementing this worth it to hear a kid say that. Another student came, I think, to get both of us and said, "You have to meet my dad. You have to come and meet my dad." And he took us back, and his father said, "Never have I seen my child ever excited to come to school." And he was up and ready to go every morning for this summer camp. So we appreciate you taking the time, giving us the funding for this really, really worthwhile experience for our students and for us.
One more slide. All right. There were so many things to celebrate that we really didn't want to list them all because it would have taken many slides. So we kind of grouped them together to make pretty general ones. But I have to say, every day, Michelle and I were excited to go into every classroom. We visit everyone every day, participate with the kids, and to see teachers just as excited as the kids about what everybody was doing.
As we reflect on things, I think the last group, the elementary teachers mentioned, we always can use more time. We could use more time to plan, more time to have the kids there, just more time for everything. That was our biggest reflection. And also something that we took away from it was just how excited teachers were when we lift some of the stringent guidelines that we have, and we can have the time to plan together co-curricularly and give students a really well-rounded experience. So next we have the high school teachers that are coming.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy Gillum, and this is Christy Patton. The Summer Pathways program allowed high school students to make cross-curricular connections while focusing on one of 3 teacher-chosen United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One student from Sharando High School chose the UN Sustainable Goal of mental health and well-being. She had transferred from another school right before the pandemic hit and was unable to connect with her new school and peers. She said the isolation took a toll on her motivation to learn and to connect with others, which caused her to fail most of her classes. At the Summer Pathways program, she researched the impact of COVID on mental health and explored strategies for how to cope and reconnect with others. At the end of the program, she said, "I remembered that I really do love learning." One program attendee from Millbrook High School investigated clean water and sanitation. She told her own story of living in El Salvador and how the lack of clean water impacts everyone there. She explored how water is purified and distributed throughout the United States. She shared with her family members still in El Salvador how water can be cleaned. As a result of her experience, she is now pursuing an internship with the water treatment plant here in Winchester. And the third example is a student from James Wood High School chose to focus on zero hunger. He has a part-time job working in a restaurant and noticed how much food is being wasted each day. He researched how restaurants can donate the extra food they have to homeless shelters and local food banks. As a result, he's created a system at his restaurant to donate food on a daily basis and is hoping to expand his plan to other restaurants in the area.
The teachers in the Pathways program collaborated to design and teach mini lessons to students, and those are some of the topics in which they did. The students then applied these skills from these mini lessons directly to their projects. At the end of the 3 weeks, the students collectively recovered 211 credits and will now have a better chance to follow their own high school plan. The high school students stated multiple times that they now have hope. They realize that what they can accomplish, and this program was truly the foundation for many students to once again gain that spark for the love of learning. And it is still carrying on today if you speak to them. We would like to thank the members of the board and Dr. Savine for their continued support of the summer academies, Dr. Myers and her instructional team for the amount of support they provided from the beginning until the end, affording these students the time to reconnect with one another, engage in project-based learning opportunities, and better understand the impact they can have in our community was a wonderful learning experience and truly captured each of the competencies that are of Inspire 2025. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of closing comments. I want to first thank Becky and Kelsey, Laura, Michelle, Kathy, and Christy. This makes for a long day. You know, they've been teaching all day long today. So I want to thank them for putting this together and being here this evening to share this experience with you. They were the leads in Summer Academy at various levels, elementary, middle, and high, but they supported students and they supported teachers. What you're not seeing are the numbers of teachers who said, yes, I want to do that this summer. This was not, we told people they had to teach over summer. We knew the stress levels that teachers experienced last year. We understood that. These teachers and these leaders that spoke with you this evening, I don't want to say volunteered, they certainly got paid and they should have gotten paid for what they did, but they volunteered to do this summer and they did a remarkable job. And as you know, when we engaged our community in the development of Inspire 2025, our strategic plan, we heard from business leaders of organizations across the community the importance of, everybody understands content is a given. We're not abandoning teaching content, but they really stressed the importance of problem solving, of being able to work together, of being able to communicate effectively with one another, to be creative, and to think critically. And this is one example of how we're implementing our strategic plan. I love the quote from the student. I wrote it down. I wish school was always like this. That was an 8th grade student. My response to that 8th grade student, if he or she were standing in front of me, would be, just wait, it's coming. We're working on it. We're coming closer and closer every day in different places. And I hope that's a James Wood High School student, because they have done amazing things this year to change the way they think about student learning, as have all of our schools, really. But with that, I will close my report, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you may have.
Comments or questions from any board members at this time?
Another great project, project-based learning. I don't think I've ever heard of a failure. I don't think I've heard negative reviews. Kids love it. It's a great way of teaching. It's real-world stuff. Congratulations to everybody involved. Great stuff.
Mr. Comstock.
I was able to visit the high school at James Wood where they were sharing their projects, and to hear firsthand from the students and to see their excitement in sharing their projects. And they had researched and they had done these projects based on things that they had chosen and that they were passionate about. And some of the students, their stories were very real in why they had chosen those things. They had a very strong personal connection, some of them with family members with substance abuse and just other serious things that had happened to them. And so to see their excitement for learning was really, it was really inspiring. No pun intended, but it was really it was really neat. And like that 8th grade student, I do look forward to the day that their learning every day looks like that, because that's, where they learn best. So thank you to the team over there who helped make this happen.
Thank you. Thank you all for your leadership and another success here. Thank you, Dr. Angelo.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, what Mr. Comstock described is one of the many capstone projects that was done actually at all levels, and it sets the stage. It will be replicated across the division. It's a part of the strategic plan so that students make real world and local connections in terms of their learning. So as Dr. Angelo mentioned, this is just the start, much more to come. We have strong business partnerships and professionals coming in and supporting these rich learning experiences. So I want to thank this board and certainly the team of talented leaders and teachers in our schools for making this a reality.
Thank you. Next on our reports, we have the Executive Director of Human Resources, Ms. Rydholm.
Once again, following Dr. Angelo and his team. So mine never seems so exciting. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Savine. I have our staffing report for this evening. And again, as always, I don't want to read it all to you because it is there in front of you, but if you'll recall, the bold figures are what we currently have in vacancies, and what's in parentheses is what we had last year at this time. As we've discussed at each board meeting, our staffing has been very challenging this year, and you'll see that we still have 18 teacher vacancies. 10 of those are classroom, and then there's coaches and reading coaches, literacy coaches as well. The breakdown you'll see under the regular education column and the special education column in the shaded area is our current vacancies, and to the right of those are what we had last year at this time. So you will see that we have a total of 9 elementary vacancies, 3 middle school, 2 high, 2 NREP, and then 1 at the Regional Detention Center and 1 at the school board office. We have 3 other professional vacancies compared to 2 last year. And in looking at support, you'll see what's also fairly notable is last year at this time we had 22 vacancies. We currently have 40. We still have been hiring, but people are also resigning, as we hire. I think this is a reflection of what's going on in our greater community as well. So we are continuing to work at that and go to back to school nights to recruit, and have had a little success there. By content area, this is not new either. Most of the time when we do have vacancies, the highest number of vacancies do occur within the special education area. Next this year is our highest number is counselors, then CTE, resource, and then pretty much it's English, the literacy coach and math. Our filled rate, or our filled numbers this year, we have 212 teachers filled. 108 of those were new teachers, the rest were transfers. 12 in the other professional category, 4 of those were new hires, the others are internal. And then we had 6 administrator hires, 4 of those were new. And then the teacher resignation reasons, we continue to track this as best we can. So we have currently 26 who have left for Loudoun County. 20 have retired. 19 have left for family or personal reasons. That's up by 2 from last year. We have 16 who've accepted non-teaching positions. These are folks leaving the profession, at least currently leaving. That is 16 as opposed to 9 last year. So that's a significant number to pay attention to. We have 14 who are teaching in another area of Virginia or out of state. 11 relocating, that's up as well. 9 in the other category, that can be for either performance reasons or other issues there. COVID-19, 5 who are leaving that they said specifically because of that. And then we have 3, 3, and 1 for Shenandoah, Winchester, and Clark, and those are down a little bit this year as far as the numbers going to those particular schools. So I think the notable piece is those leaving the profession, as well as, of course, always, the numbers going to Loudoun County. There are no questions.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, just a few if I may. Appreciate the resignation reasons. Is there a way that we could get kind of the opposite, folks that are coming in? I'm able to review the resumes and kind of can see that, but just a number might
We're
be
going to work
helpful.
on that. That's our next project, is to start talking to teachers about why they stay. So it'll be a very time-intensive process because we're going to do it in person, but that will be hopefully something that we'll have for you later on this year.
Sure. And then previous slide, I think there was a number 40 of support staff. Does that include the 7 FTEs on the agenda for
No.
this evening? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions, comments? All right, thank you. That concludes our reports for this evening, which brings us to new business. First up, we have our Personnel Committee report.
Mr. Chairman, that's me. A meeting of the Personnel Committee was held at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building on August 26th. The meeting was called to order at 4 p.m., and a copy of the minutes has been provided to each board member. During the meeting, Mr. Bach, Mrs. Rydholm, Dr. Sovine, and Mr. Edwards reviewed proposed revisions to policies 506P and 514P. With regard to the required cultural competency training for licensed staff referenced in policy 514P, the committee requested that the superintendent keep the board informed on the development of both the guidance issued by the Virginia Board of Education regarding that training, as well as the school division's plan to offer such training to staff. In addition, Mr. Bach, Dr. Angelo, and Mrs. Rydholm reviewed a request for 2 full-time equivalent bus aides and 5 full-time equivalent 5 FTEs for the Special Instructional Services Department. All of the requested positions are to be funded through the American Rescue Plan ESSER funds. Additional details regarding what was covered at the committee meeting are included in the information provided to board members. Are there any questions about the Personnel Committee meeting held on August 26th? Okay. Seeing none, there are a few action items coming from that meeting. The first is recommending adoption of policy 506P personnel, prohibition against harassment and retaliation.
Is that a motion, Mr. Counsel?
Sorry, I would like to move that we adopt policy 506P personnel, prohibition against harassment and retaliation.
Thank you, Mr. Comstock. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Washington. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Second, there was, coming from that committee, there was a recommendation to adopt policy 514P personnel professional development programs. I would actually like to move that we table that one for the moment until we have that additional information. This policy was one that stated that every employee holding a license issued by the Board of Education would be required to complete cultural competency training as determined by the state, but we have not seen what that looks like from the state. So I feel it best to table that for the moment until we have that guidance from the state.
So it's a motion to table.
Yes, sir. Motion to
Mr.
table.
Comstock. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Washington. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. You sure?
Sure.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Thank you. I was just going to say in general that both of these policies that came forward had a lot of discussion during the committee meetings. As Mr. Comstock stated, the professional development programs, the state is requiring, regardless of anything that a school board would say, that certain licensing things have to be put into place. As a board, we struggled over the conversation of just bringing it even towards the full board because the state has failed to give us what those guidelines and what that looks like. As we were going through, we wanted to make sure that we were not, while we have to go through certain regulations, we wanted to make sure that this board would have the opportunity to look over what that type of training or any of those types of materials would be prior to being able to make that full decision. So I'm in full support, obviously, of tabling that because we really did not, it was a struggle to get it to this point. and we did not want to do something blindly. So that is why that is being tabled right now until the state gives us a little bit more information for clarity.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. Mr. Monk?
Thank you, Ms. Washington, as well, Mr. Chairman. I want to reiterate that this would be this board adopting policies requiring our teachers to go through training that hasn't even been developed by the Department of Education. And so that's why in committee I voted against it and just not in favor of general practice of approving policies that haven't even been developed yet. So I appreciate the board tabling it this evening.
All right. Any other discussion? Sorry. Mr. Lake?
Yeah, just so given what's just been said, can we assume that there is no deadline to adopt this policy from the state?
This will be in effect for the 22-23 school year.
Okay. That's good.
Any other discussion? We do have a motion on the table. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes as tabled.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve 2 full-time equivalent bus aides to be funded through the McKinney-Vento subgrant of the American Rescue Plan ESSER funds and 5 full-time equivalent positions for the Special Instructional Services Department to be funded from the ESSER grant for a period not to exceed 3 years.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Comstock. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Washington. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just for a point of clarification, I know this was discussed in committee, but want the full board to have the opportunity to hear it. But I did ask some questions around these FTEs, and they are a limited contract period, and it was shared with from staff that applicants will be made aware of that contract time just because the ESSER funds will not be available after that 3-year period. So just wanted to make sure that not only our board was aware, but community was aware as well, as those applicants are aware as they're applying that the position will no longer be available after those 3 years and the funding is unavailable.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the table. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
And Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes from the Personnel Committee meeting held on August 26, 2021.
Motion by Mr. Comstock. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Washington. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Comstock.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
I don't know if there may be some question about what the other policy is, the 506P that the board just voted to adopt. So I want to make sure people know where they can find that, and that it's that policy has to do with threatening, intimidating, and humiliating behavior in the workplace with employees, between employees against other employees. So I wanted to make sure everyone's clear that that's what that policy is on. So
thank you, Mr.
It's kind of it was recommended by the VSBA as a tightening of language as a result of Title IX and some other things that came through this past year. Thank you.
All right, that concludes the Personnel Committee report, which brings us to our Finance Committee report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building on August 26th. The meeting was called to order at 5 p.m., and a copy of the minutes has been provided to each board member. During the meeting, Mrs. Camry provided an update on CARES Act revenues and expenditures through June 30, 2021. She reported the school division has $16,525,501 in CARES Act funding remaining. Several members of Mrs. Camry's staff reviewed FY21 financial statements. Assistant Director of Finance Kristen Anderson reported the total school operating fund surplus was $4,718,828, which includes an obligated operating surplus of $454,276 and an unobligated operating surplus of $4,264,552. The unobligated operating surplus represents 2.2% of the FY 2021 school operating budget. Mrs. Anderson stated that there were several key factors that contributed to the unobligated surplus funds, including state sales tax revenue, savings in payroll expenditures, and saving in school and department budgets. Mrs. Camry then reviewed a recommendation to provide a supplemental budget adjustment to the capital projects funds for $4,264,552, which represents the remaining FY 2021 school operating funds for the purchase of items in the FY 2022 capital asset plan request, which was not funded by the Board of Supervisors this year. Should the recommendation be approved by the school board, approval of the Board of Supervisors will still be required. Mrs. Camry also reviewed the resolution for the Virginia Public School Authority Educational Technology Funds declaring the board's intent to reimburse itself for qualifying expenditures. She noted that Frederick County Public Schools has been allocated $570,000 and NREP has been allocated $26,000 as part of the VPSA Educational Technology Grant Initiative, and both amounts were included in the FY 2022 budget. Additional details regarding the information covered at the committee meeting are included in the minutes provided to the board members. Are there any questions from board members about information shared at the Finance Committee meeting held on August 26? Mr. Chairman, we did have a number of action items come out of the meeting. First one, I recommend approval of the supplemental budget adjustment to the school operating fund for $10,793,768.89, which represents the American Rescue Plan Act Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, ESSER 3.
Thank you, Mr. Hester. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I know during finance, I probably provided some lengthy discussion, unfortunately, for those colleagues that weren't able to attend, and have a few questions I just want to ask. I think I've got answers to those, Mrs. Camry and team. But this ESSER 3 are funds that need to be spent by September of 2024, and it looks like what was put out in basic for public comment is that 7.2 million of that would be going towards the renovation of the old Ayler Middle School. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, and then I noticed later in kind of what was put out for public comment and that we received in our board packet is that the renovation would allow the building to be used in the fall of 2021 and in future years. And my concern during our committee meeting is that the board hadn't really received much information outside of a one-pager on what that money, that $7.2 million, would be used for in renovation of Ayler. What opportunities would this board have, whether it be Ms. Camry or Dr. Savine, to appropriate that $7.2 million once it's received as part of the federal ESSER 3 dollars?
Yes, sir, Mr. Monk. I'll invite Mr. Bach forward. The board did receive a briefing this summer in terms of guidance from the B&G committee regarding a committee that is researching this and will be bringing forward additional options. I'll let Mr. Bach share those additional details that were presented and I believe are in the board minutes from July.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Savine. At the Building and Grounds Committee meeting, we did provide a detailed summary of how those funds would be utilized. Obviously, we have about 80 students currently who are in virtual Virginia. Those students need an educational setting to report to have their IEP needs met and accommodations met. So Ayler would be utilized as a site for students to do that. In doing so, we have to bring our restrooms up to code, which do not meet ADA compliance. We have some ramps in the building that obviously do not meet ADA, which would require the installation of a chair ramp in the school. Also looking at mitigation for some asbestos tile in certain areas of the building and an upgrade to the HVAC system. So we did provide a detailed summary of those items at Building and Grounds, and the notes should reflect that.
Sure, thank you. If I may follow up, Mr. Chairman. The detail, I guess the summary that I provided was just a page or so here. And so the 7.2, once those dollars were to potentially go into Ayler, what would be the lifespan of that building after that?
Well, we have a committee that's coming together, Mr. Monk, to examine how to use AILR moving forward after our virtual Virginia students. That committee will be meeting shortly, and hopefully by the end of October, we'll have an update for the full board.
Sure, and so I recognize that in order for this board to receive these ESSER $3, the board would need to vote, and downtown would need to approve that as an appropriation in the budget. Once that occurs, then what authority would this board have before those dollars are spent? Would we have any voting authority before action was taken to spend that $10 million? Or would that be the extent of our oversight of those dollars?
Right now, I will invite Mrs. Camry forward to, right now, the action is for the supplemental appropriation. There are adjustments that can be made by the board. I'll yield to Mrs. Camry for additional details.
Yeah, we had to put the plan out on our website, which is where it is to take public comment. And certainly we have to get the appropriation from you to approve it, as well as the Board of Supervisors. But certainly any time during that process to 2024, the plan can change, depending on what action you want to take. So it's really not a one and done per se, but we have to, the application was due September 1st, so we had to have a plan to get it out there and get it approved by the state before you all could take action as well.
Sure. And what would that time, I know, the funds have to be expensed by 2024, but what is our, and that may be the committee deciding that, but what would be the timeline that this board would have to take action to maybe redirect those funds potentially, if that's the will of the board?
Before we start spending what we do have. I mean, in reality, once the plan is already approved, it's just like any other grant, you can make adjustments to what you requested. So any time before the funds get spent, you can make that request.
Yeah, and I'll just add to Mrs. Camry's comments, the discussion by the B&G committee, I believe in June or in July, was the timeline was at your fall training session. You will receive your first briefing. At the time, it was scheduled for the end of October. Now, by the action of this board, that will occur on November the 5th. In addition, the committee will continue their work, and it will likely be in the second semester, perhaps in March, I believe, what was discussed, that you'll receive a full recommendation by this committee regarding AILR. And at that time, should the board choose to make any adjustments to that plan, you would have that opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Dr. Svine. Appreciate it.
Any other discussion? We have a motion on the table. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, recommend approval of a supplemental budget adjustment to the school operating fund for $454,276.12, which represents the following obligated funds received during FY 2021 and requested for carry forward into FY 2022. $272,230.80 for learning loss, $52,596.22 E-rate. I'm sorry, that's for the loss. E-rate, $50,904.40 project graduation, $50,134.77 mentor teacher program, Apple Federal CU Educational Foundation, $21,746.51. SOL Algebra Readiness Program funding, state and local shares, $5,479.92. Virginia Tiered Systems of Support, and $1,183.50 for VA Star Program. Don't ask me to repeat that again.
We have a motion by Mr. Hester. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, recommend approval of a supplemental budget adjustment to the capital projects funds for $4,264,551.80, which represents the remaining FY 2021 school operating funds for the purchase of items in the FY 2022 CAP requests not funded by the Board of Supervisors, which include an HVAC heat pump replacement with front and rear entry replacements at Sharando High School, skylight replacement at Middletown Elementary School, roof replacement at FCPS Administration Office Building, and HVAC replacement at the Transportation Administration and Maintenance Building, as well as the purchase of 19 buses.
We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Monk.
Similar in committee, had some questions around this expense as well. So first, just want to thank the committee for rearranging the schedule. I know last year when this came up, it was right before a school board meeting. This year, we had the opportunity to discuss it and had plenty of time to go around that. So I want to thank the Finance Committee and Ms. Camry for that adjustment. One of the items, I guess, that is concerning for me is the Transportation Administration Building and the Transportation Maintenance Building HVAC system replacement, totaling around $800,000 in that. And understanding that our transportation buildings were built in 2013, want to understand the process that HVAC RFPs are vetted and techs are vetted and systems are vetted before we get them. That's a relatively new system. I counted just quickly here about 7 of our schools that have older HVAC systems that have already gone out of date, and that one wasn't scheduled to be replaced until 2033. So just want some assurances that a system that new, we wouldn't have any type of failures in some of these other systems, or what processes we have to make sure that this is an anomaly.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I see Mr. Chrisman, who is in the back, also briefed the committee regarding this question last week. I'll invite him forward. As he's coming forward, I'll just remind the board that this item is a part of the CAP, and as you may recall, during last year's budget process that covered multiple months, the board took action and approved each of these items. So what you have before you was what was approved by the school board, but the funding was denied by the Board of Supervisors. But I'll have Mr. Chrisman speak to the HVAC questions regarding the Transportation Center.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, board members, Dr. Savine, Mr. Monk, 2013, although it doesn't seem like that long ago, it was. And we've had several projects since then. This project that happened at Transportation was an efficiency project. We wanted to get the most efficient system that we could. We picked a VRF system that we were not familiar with, in-house, never had one. That was our first. We did seek outside consultation through engineering services, things like that. And basically what we got, and there were successful projects like it around, and we did talk to people. What we really got was a manufacturer that wasn't ready to come to market yet on a system that wasn't ready. So what we've had for the basically the last 8 years is we've had a cold building or a hot building during the summer. And Mr. Grubbs can attest to that. We've done everything that we can to get that system back up and running. We've consulted other engineers, and they said it was really a poor design for what they were trying to do. But basically, it was a poor manufacturing decision. So to address your question about how we're doing it differently now than what we did before, certainly we vetted different now. There is no better teacher in the world than a bad experience, and we've sure had a bad one here. We've supplemented that system with electric heat to keep them warm. We had windows over there that were frosting up in Mr. Grubbs' office, as a matter of fact. So obviously, we've had several projects since then. And from the facility services side, our viewpoint was absolutely not. We're not going back with VRF. We've had a bad experience. We don't like it. We don't want it. But things have changed. There's a lot more experience out there. I myself talked to 4 of my counterparts across the state. I'll be honest with you, 3 of them love their systems. 1 hates it. And he hates it for the same reason that we do, or that we did. So his experience was the same, about the same time frame, same manufacturer, same problems. So that makes sense. I hope that's not me. It's not. So we found somebody that had that same thing, so we can learn from that experience, but we learn from our own experience as well. But also talked to 3 others that had a good experience with their systems. Had them in place a long time. One of them was John Kerr Elementary School right up here on the hill. That's a VRF system. They've had no problem. I talked to my counterpart, Tim Ratliff in Winchester, and their chief HVAC technician. They love the system. It works well for them. I talked to Roanoke. I talked to Franklin County. And so from that, you gain some of those questions, but you hear about the experience and why theirs went well and why ours went poorly. So what happened is, and we were still at the same place when we began some of the projects we've got now, Indian Hollow in particular, and we said no again. We said we do not want that system in there. But through the process, the CMAR process is a lot different than what we used to use, especially back in 2013. So the process is more involved now. There's a whole lot of players. We get to hash these things out. They can tell us about their experiences or give us references for experiences, and we can also come up with a good game plan that ensures that we're not going to do the same thing again. So basically, my team came up. We've toured some other schools that have them. We came up with a 10-point list that we think needs to be accomplished before we can really accept BRF as an option. The 3 key of that is we specify the manufacturer, and the manufacturer that we used in 2013 for transportation is not on that list. We're using only the 2 top ones in the world. Europe has a lot more experience with this than we do, and the East has a little bit more experience with it as well. So we picked the top 2. Anybody that comes in to install this system has to be factory certified technicians, because we found out now that it's not just the system itself, it's how it's installed. So that was another thing. It will be checked by a third party, hopefully factory representatives that will come in here before it's commissioned and before it goes online to verify that it's installed correctly. Installation being the key now, not so much the manufacturer. The last thing is we're going to be on site. We're going to be working through with the contractor to see how it's installed, how it's utilized, how it works. But we're also going to send our HVAC technicians to factory certified schools. During the construction process, hopefully before the construction process, so that we can monitor how it's going in. And we can learn along with them of how to maintain the equipment. So there's a lot different now than what it was in 2013. There's some really good advantages to the RF system. It's highly efficient. Doesn't rely on fossil fuels as much as the other systems. In a remote place like Indian Hollow, that's a real plus for us. So we've come off of our strict stance only because we're feeling a little bit more comfortable with our knowledge in it, and that we've got good people on our team in the CMAR process that's going to help us through it.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. So just recognizing that we've got a lot that we've already expended in HVAC and a lot planned just with ESSER money, we feel confident that this issue that we had with transportation won't occur again in the same way.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, the motion is on the table. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, recommend approval of the resolution declaring its intent and reimburse itself from the proceeds of one or more grants made by the Commonwealth of Virginia for certain expenditures made and or to be made in construction with certain capital improvements.
We have a motion by Mr. Hester. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, recommend approval of the minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on August 26, 2021.
Motion by Mr. Hester. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hester. Does that conclude your report?
Yes. And then we'll go
Thank
on
you.
to the next item.
All right, next we have FY 2022 Supplemental Appropriation, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds to support ventilation replacement and improvement projects. Ms. Camry.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman, members of the board. So we never really get good news, but guess what? We have some good news. You know, we met on the 26th during our finance meeting, and I did the report on where we were with CARES funding and ESSER funds. Well, that following Monday, we got notified that yet again, we're getting some more funds that are coming our way. So that's what we're here tonight, is seeking your approval for this budget adjustment for FY22, and then to take that budget request downtown. So what we've been awarded is $2,769,024 to be used through December 24th. Obligated and then expended meant all funds spent by 2026. These funds require a 100% match, but they allow ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funds to serve as the match. These funds have to be for HVAC systems. So, Mr. Monk, here we get back to HVAC. So we're talking about 2.7 here of this ESSER funds, and then the match that we already have. If you remember, we talked about ESSER 2 funds on the 26th, and all that 4.8 is for HVAC. So we've already met the match through our ESSER 2 funds. So tonight we're seeking your approval so that we can move this forward, and we'll again start looking at other HVAC systems to be updating, because this is all these funds can be used for. And I'll entertain any questions that I can at this point in time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cameron. Any questions at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve an FY 2022 budget adjustment to the school operating fund in the amount of $2,769,024, which represents funds received from the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds to support ventilation replacement and improvement projects.
We have a motion by Mr. Hester. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. And that brings us to board member comments. Are there any this evening? Well, this might be a first.
Mr. Chairman, since nobody else is going to talk, I'll say something. I'd like to thank all the bus drivers in Frederick County Public School System, the administration, and the aides. A lot of jurisdictions are having trouble with bus drivers, keeping them and maintaining the bus fleet. And so far, I hate to jinx us, everything's been good for Frederick County as far as our bus runs and not running double runs. And also, thank you to Mr. Grubbs and your staff, Mrs. Rod Holmes and her staff, and all the bus drivers out there. I was fortunate when I worked 2 jobs back in the 70s to drive a bus, and it's a good job, and it's not bad pay in a part-time position. But I just want to thank people for what they do for our children.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just would like to duly make our students aware that there's a lot of HVAC potential business coming to town in Frederick County, so it may be a good opportunity for career advancement for them if they want to go into the skilled trades. But did want to comment on our Teacher of the Year from Middletown and congratulate her. And then also, I know there was a lot of comments tonight about transgender issue and those policies, and I can assure you that the board has heard those and is taking those into consideration.
Mr. Chairman, if
Mrs.
I may,
Washington.
just really quickly, I just wanted to reiterate again the teachers and the students during the summer program. With Mr. Comstock, I also went to the showcasing of it, and it was just amazing to see how those students and teachers, one, interacted with each other, but when you're given the opportunity to actually love what it is that you're doing, it was really remarkable to watch. So I just appreciate the fact that we were able to give our students that opportunity, and it was really exciting to see them so excited about what they were doing. There wasn't a single project that the kids weren't excited about sharing. So they almost didn't even have enough time for us to listen to everything that they wanted to say. So I just say kudos to those teachers involved, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Washington. In addition to all the thank yous, I'd like to thank Frederick County's finest for being here with us again this evening. As always, we appreciate you and your service. Anyone else this evening? Mr. Wright?
That being said, Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.